Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to the third session of the Finterm Bay Arts AMP Music Online Training Program. This is a run of discussions called Working Creatively and Creating Work. The aim of these discussions is to shine a light on the differing avenues that you can take to find ways to sustain a passion for music, work within the music industry or any creative industry, and improve personal progression in your chosen field. There's a somewhat unbalanced view of work within the creative industry that prioritizes creating art in order to create a career. This is obviously true in many ways, but there are also many other paths that you can take and work within the creative sector. Tonight, we're going to be discussing a little bit about that. This evening, I actually have the pleasure of introducing a Glasgow mainstay, a good friend of mine, who's firmly put their stamp on the scene here and around the UK. Through organizing inclusive, progressive parties and playing killer DJ sets. Please welcome BONZAI BONNER to the stage.
Hello.
Bonner is a DJ, promoter, venue booker, and leading figure in celebrating increasing the visibility of the LGBTQI+ community within the UK and further, especially in Glasgow, I should say. Today, we're going to be discussing how they have worked to transition their output in the creative industry from a passion to full-time work, and discussing the ins and outs of running a successful club night that's called Shoot Your Shot, that prioritizes marginalized and underrepresented voices in an industry still struggling to catch up. So just a little bit of info before we begin. If you have any questions during the session, we have a comments bar on the webpage, so just pop your questions in and our tech guru, Steve, will make a note of them and can pass them on to me for the end of the session. Okay, so without further ado, welcome, Bonner. How are you doing?
I'm good. Just talking to you earlier about being in Oban for 2 days. A nice relaxing time after a very successful weekend with 2 friends of mine playing at the Berkeley Suite.
Brilliant.
And they're still staying at mine.
Oh, very nice. That went that well then.
Just playing records, getting ready for playing other gigs this weekend.
Yes, using your place as a pit stop between gigs.
Yeah.
Very nice. It must have been nice to get some fresh air on the West Coast after a busy, like you say, a very busy club and a busy weekend of organizing and running around.
Yep.
Cool. So I thought we would just get started. You could tell us all a little bit about how you got into dance music and the kind of the creative scene, and how long you've been involved.
Yeah, well, I've always been into music, and maybe we don't know about genres when we first start listening to certain grooves, and I'd say that my first time of getting into dance music would be going to I don't know if you've ever been, but M&D's, the Strathclyde theme park. I would always there was a time that every weekend on a Saturday I'd get dropped off there with my pals, and we just end up getting an unlimited day pass, go on all the rides, probably about 3 or 4 times on a loop. But the music, like, I remember from a very young age, the music that dominated the places I was going was dance music, but you didn't know that's what it was called. And it was at that moment, in the 19th century, I might have said there, but 19th century. But in the 90s, very much dance music was the chopper of the charts, and as well as Eurodance as well. And from then I was pretty hooked on all of the melodies, and from a young age as well. They still are one of my favourite bands. It's Erasure, but that's more synth pop, but that's still very much related to everything going back to, very early parts of the dance scene.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just I've got to admit that I was going into clubs underage, but that was to get nearer to the music more than anything, and that also applied with live music. All of the places that I have worked in now. Such as, I'm not going to name drop all of these places because I know that their security measures will be much better than maybe they were back then. But I was going into a lot of venues that were maybe they were giving me I don't know, like they a lot of places would see me going to the back of the stage, like just at the door to listen to the sound checks, because that was the easiest way for me to get nearer to it, and maybe eventually they knew I wasn't going to cause any harm and let me in. And these were definitely like the building blocks. I found that when I was at my happiest was being drawn, and it was environments that music was the forefront, and whether it's live or dance, and that was definitely the start of getting into it.
Yeah, wow. For me, I think my first memory is my dad going, "What's this rubbish?" and turning off Radio 1 at like 8 p.m. on a Friday when we were on the way to the cinema or something like that. And it would have been like Pete Tong or something like that. And that, I think it was more my dad not being into it that kind of pushed me. That age where you're like, well, why aren't you into it? So I want to pull at that thread, I want to figure out what it is why it's pushing your buttons like that.
I got the same too. It was you and your rock bands. And I'm knowing that also, Anders dance, when you get to an age that you go, well, actually, it's more refined than rock. I like this, that, and the other.
And it kind of goes full circle, because you then, like, I'm now like, my dad will put something on the radio and I'm like, oh, turn that rubbish off. No, I'm not listening to that. And so it's kind of, we become ourselves. So at what point, because you're a very, very proficient and talented DJ, and at what point did the passion that you had for music and the kind of like striving to be in a space with music, when did that turn to a performance-based thing for you?
The same thing applies. That I was playing in venues underage again. And that's how I got into it, and that's with, like, whether it was playing the bass, doing drums for a band, or my first ever gig was just gathering the few records that I had. And at that time I was really and it's funny to look at how your music taste evolves and grows, but I was really buying at one moment it was Bauhaus records. So I had loads of Bauhaus records, and I was playing that. We used to be it's now called Max's, but at the time it was called Rock Gardens. And I remember playing some records.
Playing some Bauhaus records.
Like I played that underage, but then there was a big spell of my time that I never seeked out playing or DJing for a long spell, and it was how I just got back into it was actually maybe less than 4 years ago, and taking it more into what it is now, and that is definitely 4 years.
Wow.
And there was a time that I didn't collect records. I maybe not as such fell out of love of doing what I enjoyed. It's just you become focused on other things. Life happens, and you've got other responsibilities and things going on. At that time, I was still. I started Shoot Your Shot in 2014, but I never actually got behind the decks until 2017. Like 3 years it took me to get behind the decks of it.
Was there a point? Sorry to interrupt you. Was there a point where you because like you say, your early experience of DJing was as obviously quite a lot different from now, so to speak. But was there like a defining moment where you're like, actually, I do want to now start picking records? And was there anything in particular that kind of influenced that change?
I think that, the change for me, like what actually drew me to pick up records again, was when I just went on holiday alone, and I went to Montreal for the first time, and it's still the only time I've been, but I had 2 weeks to just travel alone, and everything, doing what when I started Shoot Your Shot, and also my other work schedule, everything's hectic, but that time away, dropping into that city and just seeing, like, instantly, it was one I was just fixated going into record shops, and that was 2016, and that's when I started evolving my love, and it started that chain reaction. And I began seeking out actually the chain reaction of how you start playing records again, and it is doing the really badly paid DJ gigs in bars.
Almost where you're paying to do them.
Yeah, totally. And that's how I began again doing it, and picking up records from my dad's, and that was, took a while. I had to pick up stuff, and from there it just evolved, and it was good timing, because that was when I was doing the bar gigs, but still not putting myself on the lineups of my own event. And then finally just made some changes, and
it made sense too as well by that point.
It was just an organic progression.
I think it's funny because like maybe like a comparison is that, we were talking about, like revisiting parts of Scotland that you haven't been to in a long time. I sometimes find if you live somewhere, you're maybe less likely to go to the tourist hotspots. So like being in Montreal and these shops being completely brand new to you, these record shops, it's like there's an excitement there and like a motivation to go and check them out. Whereas maybe going to the ones in Glasgow, you're like, well, I know them all. Do you know what I mean? And I'm maybe not going to find things that I would like. Whereas this is a completely new universe that I'm.
Yeah, but maybe it's that familiarity. Yeah, but it just it can dissipate your excitement to things. Yeah.
Brilliant. So now then you have been so you've been DJing for about 4 years. In that 4 years, is there anything that has been like a real defining moment for you behind the decks?
I think definitely seeing the involvement of Shoot Your Shot's been a huge thing in only 7 years, what's been achieved and created. And for myself, it's not that how do you define something? For me, it's definitely more to do with the audiences coming along, and that defines what I'm up to. And I know there's something really exciting being achieved here, and to see what you want to set out to do, it is really happening. And we will see some clips of it later on, but without a doubt, seeing only 3 weeks ago, it was a Maximum Pressure party. That's 2,000 people in SWG3. Yeah.
I mean, that's a kind of pinch yourself moment, really.
Aye, so that's an event that, because of for people who don't know what Maximum Pressure is, it's a techno-based club night. That's folk who are called, if you hear a techno duo called Slam, they also have a club event called Pressure, which has been going for, I think it's about 3 decades. Surely it must be, it's a long time. And this is our super club, and it takes up all of the space in SWG3. that's the galvanizers, the TV studio, and the upstairs warehouse. And I chose to put Shoot Your Shot upstairs for quite a few reasons, because the bar's located upstairs. I have to be mindful about the audience who come along, the demographic. Mm-hmm. I have a much different demographic to what the usual pressure crowd are. And I want to know that people are going to have toilets that are signed as gender neutral, because I have people who are they're beyond the binary spectrum that come along to my events, and that's a very important part of that signage being correct for many people that join. And these are like events too that this is, I think it's the biggest clubbing event in Glasgow.
I would say, yeah.
And to do something like that, which has never been done before, that there's a lot of discussion that has to be done in the background. There's a lot of logistics. You don't go in blindsided, because this could have been in some way, like it could have been a totally wrong social experiment for some people. And so I had to be very mindful of that, and set the message across that we are just wanting that it's a zero tolerance approach.
And yeah, I think in bringing the, like we spoke about very briefly, and we will talk about this a bit more when we get to the videos, but being able to work with a, like you say, it's not a traditionally queer night as in Maximum Pressure or Pressure, and then with yourselves Shoot Your Shot, and being able to marry the two and make sure that both communities are still represented, and represented in as safe a way as possible, so that people aren't feeling like they're in danger, or are feeling like it's a Shoot Your Shot party and they can go and be who they are at the Shoot Your Shot parties, that they how they want
it has to be translated correctly. Sorry to interrupt you there,
no,
but
not at all,
that's what it's about, is it's making sure that what your message or who your audience are, that this also translates into another audience, but
and being able to exist together in the same space and
coexist,
exactly, and show that there shouldn't need to be any separation in the first place, but for now we are, and we're working towards that and adapting Shoot Your Shot as well. It must have been like you say, logistically quite a task to get to a point where you felt it was
very successful, though. I have to give credit to Dave Clark, the main organizer of the event. He's been probably one of the best allies in Glasgow right now. And he's listening. The building blocks are being made in the events that he's a part of, and change doesn't happen overnight, but it's hell of a good if you put the building blocks in to start it with. And it's mind blowing to have finally, and it was a lineup that was celebrating people who were queer, and people, but like everyone, the people of colour, everyone, and but having two trans women headlining, along with having trans bodies as the dancers, it's 10 out of 10.
Yeah. You know what? I think Steve can probably hear us in the background, but I think it would make more sense if we actually show the footage of that, and then we can show we'll listen to a bit of a mix from you a bit later, maybe. So Steve, if you're listening, maybe we'll go with the videos, and we'll just take a wee breather, and then this is the perfect introduction to talk a little bit about building your brand and Shoot Your Shot, and we can discuss that in a bit more detail. Oh, there we go. Brilliant. I love that video. So good. Rosie in the nun's habit as well is just brilliant. So up next, we also have some video of some performers from that night. Can you tell us who those performers are?
Well, I don't know who's going second or third here. Well, going by the order that we done it. The first one is Fran Kay, who is a durational performer, and it's a dance that they specialise in. Well, I can give some insider info that they are becoming a Shoot Your Shot resident, and that's just because they've been such a huge part of Shoot Your Shot from the lockdown of this year to all of the other dates that we've had lately. And that means that that's two resident performers. We'll now have the third, the one after Frankie will be Shrek 666, who is has been a resident performer for Shoot Your Shot for I think 3 years now.
An icon in the scene in Glasgow without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah. And these are all people that become residents because of how amazing their talent is, but on top of what they've equally given to the night, and it doesn't get forgotten about.
I think that's really important. Yeah.
Yeah. And
brilliant. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, on you go.
Let's go for it. Oh my word.
That's Shrek 666. Yeah.
That is the most terrifying outfit.
Well, it was Halloween. We were putting
you got to do
it. Yeah. But that's Damon Cleland, and Damon was on stilts, and a big part of that performance was given the illusion they were about to fall. I was right behind there taking that picture, and yeah, terrifying.
Like, please, I know you're just pretending, but please don't.
Also dressed up as Pennywise, yeah.
I know. My goodness. Yeah, the photos and the videos I saw after they posted them on Insta after the night looked amazing. The attention to detail is just incredible.
No half measure, absolutely. Yeah,
it shows. It really shows.
Yeah, it was just really great to see how many people were into what was being achieved on the night, and it couldn't have gone any better for us. Yeah.
So we'll see that last video, and then we'll dive into a little bit about promotion and the technicalities of that. It really translates the energy of that night. Yes. Just absolutely wild.
Wow. Yeah, crazy. That was Fran Kay, and I never know what either of them are up to until the night, what they're going to do performance-wise. And I don't need to know really, because they always bring something out of this world.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that a part of Frankie's performance that night was them drinking 3 bottles of Buckfast in 7 minutes. Nobody asked for that. They still they still danced. They still done the performance. Their hair was just gelled back with this gloop from Buckfast Abbey all over. Yeah, it did stink, the stage. They definitely needed a wash after that, and thankfully SWG3 has those facilities.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely, I think the point you made about not needing or not knowing and not needing to know what they're going to do, I think is just the level of trust that you have with everyone involved in Shoot Your Shot, and that it's like creating that base level of trust that the people who are involved understand what is not expected, but understands the level of freedom that they have, and they can really dive into something and express themselves. And then that in turn, just seeing the Frankie video there, like seeing people just bashing the stage barriers, seeing someone up there really letting go, it kind of gives everyone else an excuse to really let go too.
Totally.
And I think it definitely puts Shoot Your Shot above a lot of other events around the UK, but especially in Glasgow, because it creates that interactive element that isn't just a group of people stood facing a DJ.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like there's a real interactive element. It's an element of like raw creation that isn't necessarily as easily translated when it's a DJ playing alone.
Totally.
And that's something I've found. And like, I just think it's that. I mean, the videos, everyone, if you're in Glasgow, go to Shoot Your Shot. That's all I'm going to say.
Please.
Anyway, we're racing ahead with time, so I'm just aware that we have to chat a little bit more about some things. So, I thought we could talk a little bit more about promotion and particularly Shoot Your Shot. My introduction to you was through Shoot Your Shot. And now actually from what you've said, it makes total sense. I've found out about you as a promoter firstly, and that was probably because I found out about Shoot Your Shot prior to you then putting yourself on the lineups. So I thought this was a good way to start talking about how you've carved out a space for yourself in the creative industry, and kind of built your brand alongside the brand that is Shoot Your Shot. So how did you get into promoting? Because obviously you were saying that you had bar gigs, and you're obviously supremely passionate about music and picking records and stuff like that, but promoting is a different kettle of fish. So I'm just curious as to how that came about.
How I got into promoting was I worked quite a fair few doors as a security guard around Glasgow, and there were a few venues that I worked at, and I would be there on the weekend nights watching what was going on, and then just inquiring if they had any space for any midweek events, and that's when I started putting on my own events, and then realising quite quickly the time that I first put on my own events was just I think it was 2010, and that year, that was the demise of quite a lot of big events in Glasgow. That Optimo was no more, RPZ, all of these places that I went to very much religiously, that I would start my Thursday nights at the art school, RPZ, record players. There were an abundance of places you could choose from on a Friday. It was never something that was weekly, and then you'd finish off your weekend at Optimo on a Sunday, but they finished on 2010 their residency at Sub Club. But then later on in the year, I just wanted to put something on for myself and my friends, and I did do that, and that you can do that, no bother, like once. But if you put it on another fortnight. You can't just solely rely on your friends.
Yeah.
No. And I didn't do it. You find out and it can be quite a nip, and you sort of dust yourself off, do it again. But I didn't bother doing anything until another 4 years later in 2014. And that was when I was involved in, I used to do the cash desk for an event at the Poetry Club, and the people who ran the venue got in touch with me personally and asked if I would be interested to have any ideas for an event. And going back to 2010, that's when I actually, first of all, had the idea of a club night that I wanted to call Shoot Your Shot.
Yeah.
And I told, I've actually got in touch with Keith from Optimo. There were people that I got in touch with telling them, I've got an idea for a club night. I don't know, can you give me advice? Where do I go with it? But because of what I could see around the nature of clubbing, and everything was changing very rapidly after the financial crisis in Glasgow. And it's taken a very long stretch. I'd say I started seeing a big difference from maybe 2017 again. That's when the difference was changing of maybe the beginning of attitudes and behaviour and who we open doors to. But yeah, 2014 was when I got the introduction of beginning Shoot Your Shot at the Poetry Club. And I began it there. And I took on the challenge of doing it monthly. And it's still a struggle when you're only starting out. It's a commitment, and without a doubt, just my attitude towards it, my behaviour and responsibilities of taking those roles on from 7 years to now have changed for the better. I've learned a lot on the way. But that's how I began going in the route of it. And at the Poetry Club at that time, they only had a 2 a.m. licence. It wasn't just the Poetry Club, it was all of SWG3. And I had to battle with, is this what I work with? Do I go into the city centre? I take it into the city centre. I had it in Sleazy's and the art school for a while. Drew it back into the Poetry Club, and that's where a part of its residency still stays. And
was there a a bit of an echo here. I'll turn down my volume. Was there the reason for the return to the Poetry Club, which, just for anyone who isn't sure, SWG3 is a massive event space with loads of different smaller and larger spaces within it. That was actually the footage from earlier was filmed there as well. You actually mentioned that already, Bonner. But the Poetry Club itself is a really small corner of that whole premises, and it's actually the most nightclubby space that they have compared to the others, which are very much like large scale event venues. So what was because you said you went to Sleazy's, which is another space in town, and the art school. What was the reasoning for kind of falling back to, well, not falling back, but returning to the Poetry Club? Did it just feel right, or?
It felt right, but there's a lot of factors that really do go into how Shoot Your Shot works, and the space is much better. The biggest struggle when you begin an event like that over at SWG3 is because it's not a place, you have to know what you're going to. There is no passing trade. And you need a committed audience that know that down this lane, I'm going to be going to one of the best club nights in the city. But I had the appeal. What appealed to me to leave the Poetry Club for a while was the extra hour in the licence, was to get be nearer to the city centre if it was going to be easier for folk. But that if you end up caring more about who comes along to the space and how you welcome people will make the effort to go a little bit further. And that's what I finally realised. And it doesn't make sense I'm not desperate for, the straggler to come in anymore. And I was never desperate for that to begin with, but it changes dynamics a hell of a lot in a venue and audience, like in participation of people, if they just feel on edge. And unfortunately, the city centre doesn't exactly draw a mellow and chilled out crowd.
It does not exude much calm, that's for sure.
And
so,
sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. With Shoot Your Shot, maybe you can. I mean, I introduced it very briefly at the start, but maybe you could give us a bit more of a detailed idea of the driving ethos behind Shoot Your Shot, because you said you put on that one event in 2010, and then there was a 4-year gap, and then was it because you wanted to? Well, I mean, from what I've gathered, it's because there wasn't much else for the community to be involved in, and where they could feel potentially safer and enjoy themselves. Was that a driving reason to start it, or was it?
Yeah, that's definitely the reason to start it. Yeah, that's exactly why it did make sense to start a night like that at the Poetry Club. And it's still worth having that little bit of experience of taking it away and seeing if it does it. I keep saying it, but if it translates correct in other spaces, and it is. It's I've totally forgotten what that question was.
Well, basically, what's if for anyone who doesn't know about Shoot Your Shot, what's the kind of driving ethos of Shoot Your Shot?
So the driving ethos about it is now, like, maybe it didn't start with that, and that's because I was still trying to find my feet in an environment where there was not what I wanted to create. There wasn't space for it. It wasn't being allowed. And that's where it began, at the Poetry Club. And now, because of more confidence with myself to just stand up for it rather than shy away, that, maybe if I don't say anything, I might end up getting a gig, but it doesn't work out like that, and you're just fooling yourself with it. So the drive for Shoot Your Shot and myself is now to make sure that we make these spaces for everyone who wants. There's so many people already on our doorstep that are so creative, and everyone's not getting a chance yet. And that's what Shoot Your Shot's about. It's making those connections with people. I know I still don't know everybody who can do what in Glasgow, but that's the beauty of it. But equally, you end up making friends and very solid connections with people that are creating stuff that's mind-blowing. I really believe that we have some of the best artists right here.
I mean, I completely agree. And if any event that I've been to of yours, there's a different caliber. I think also there's I'm making an assumption, but having a space in which to be able to express oneself freely without judgment, and surrounded by peers and members of the community and your friends and whatnot, it creates a different level of expression and freedom, and that's palpable. It's noticeable the minute you step in the club or the space in which you're holding a Shoot Your Shot party. So you touched a little bit on well, one point that I would like to come back to was, you said it's about creating, like, if you can create a space that is welcoming and create an environment that is welcoming, then people will travel for it. It doesn't need to be in the city center. And I think that's a really, really interesting point, because a lot of the people who will be watching this will be thinking, I want to do something for myself, but maybe I live in a rural area. How do I bring people to? And that's something I struggled with as well when I used to live up north, thinking, how can I create something? It's, you know, I've sometimes fallen under the misconception that, oh, it has to be right in the center of town because of all the walk-ins. But in actual fact, it's maybe a case, maybe you can like embellish on this a little bit, but like maybe it's more, yes, okay, it's not going to be packed to the gunnels immediately, but if you create something that is worthwhile and it's for the community that you want to represent, those members of the community will make the effort to come along to it, because they are also seeking something like that out. So it's not like it's being done in a vacuum. I don't know if that...
It's like, without a doubt, that it's more rewarding when you see that if it is, sometimes that did occur in the poetry club, that it occurs all the time on a wintry Glasgow night, but you don't know if it's going to be iced over and taxis, etc. But you still have to. I still have to take my way down that lane, and I remember a night at the poetry club, and still packed to the gunnels. People still made the effort on a freezing first Saturday of February before lockdown. It was packed out.
That's saying something in itself. Like we can talk about like gig attendance pre-lockdown and post-lockdown, because now everyone's chomping at the bit to get out. So like attendance numbers are like way up in a lot of clubs. But like you say, I mean, if pre-pandemic, no one knew that we were going to have the rug pulled out from under our feet. And so a lot of people were maybe a more in a take it or leave it kind of attitude, because it was taken for granted that these club spaces were going to exist. So it's still like you say, first weekend of February as well. I mean, that's, you know, it's like the two graveyard months of the year are January and February for club events. So the fact that, I mean, that's a true testament to the fact that you've created something that is giving people something more than they can achieve on their own necessarily. So with that in mind, what knowledge, like with the knowledge and experience that you've gained over the last, well, since 2010, but I mean, with Shoot Your Shot primarily, like what are some of the things that you would tell your younger self if they were starting out and wanting to start a club night or an event space?
I would maybe say to myself of just, you know, be patient. It doesn't happen overnight, and like all of the times I would get frustrated about maybe not getting to I chosen for a gig here or there, or how I wasn't able to cut through a certain crowd. It doesn't matter, because you know, like what you end up achieving yourself, than like running with the big guns or whatever else. It actually stands the test of time more than just hype trajectory.
I think that's carry on, sorry.
No, I think that's a big thing we do, and I think that's just a bit of advice for anyone, is that don't get caught up in all of this DJ Instagram hype that we see of X amount of followers and everything looking like a tracksuit advert. And it's going on the cusp of looking too much like an editorial rather than maybe the actual quality or connections that you make with people. And that's what it's about, and it will happen in time. And
I think that's a really important point. I think there's almost a sense, especially after the pandemic, like I notice it in myself, like there's a sense of urgency after almost 2 years of like sedately doing very little and looking forward to getting back to it, and then all of a sudden it's on your doorstep and it's almost too much, and everyone's doing everything at once. And I think the patience point is so important, because by exercising that patience, you don't lose your integrity in what it is that you're passionate about and what you're doing, and you don't end up falling foul of, like you say, the kind of hype surrounding something that that bubble may burst in a couple of weeks, a year, however long. But if you stick with what you're passionate about, and as long as you can take pride in the work that you're doing, then it will pay in the long run, and you'll attract people who have the same ideas about what they're doing, and whether they're disparate fields or whether they marry up to create something brand new together. You're still surrounding yourself with people who will internally motivate you to keep that integrity, to keep that, to keep fighting the good fight, and not take yourself too seriously, essentially, because that's the main thing. I think we're all guilty of it. We spend too much time online. It's very easy to be thinking of self a lot of the time. And I think that's something with Shoot Your Shot that is really great, is that the Shoot Your Shot it feels like an umbrella that covers so much, and it doesn't feel like, I know it's your baby, but there are so many people involved, and also all the people that come along, and it creates a community and a bubbling scene within itself that then spreads out into different parts of the world, and then that progresses. And I think that's so important, because there's a lot of club nights that are quite easily seen. You can see straight away that on the face of it, it's an ego stroking exercise for those doing it. They never last that long, and usually it's the business practice is not great, or is not thought out, because they're thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about the patrons or the people coming along to the night, or the people that they're responsible for who are performing. And Shoot Your Shot doesn't do that. And like you said, like having the trust in your performers and knowing that they're going to bring their A game, and you don't need to know until, like, it's a happy surprise, but you know that they're going to bring something really special because they feel they trust you and you trust them. So when we're talking a bit, because I'm just looking at the time, so we've got about 13 minutes left. So we'll just go through this a little bit. So when we're talking about building a brand and with Shoot Your Shot, in the last few years, your, for lack of a better term, DJ status has increased, and your platform has grown. And I've been seeing you getting more and more gigs and mix offers and platforming you. How has running Shoot Your Shot helped in shaping that career path? The reason I ask this is because I also have a similar thing where I have an outside creative thing, which is my record label. And it has, through the record label growing and creating its own platform, it has also helped me grow my own platform. But I was interested in knowing if there's a relationship between the two for you with Shoot Your Shot. I know that obviously you got back into DJing, and first couple of places you played were on your own lineup, so that obviously is pertinent. But if there's any other points you've got to make about that.
Yeah, it's definitely the Shoot Your Shot's actually just allowed me to use my DJing again with a platform, but also it's just allowed me to express, I think, my own values and ways, and how I would love to see the world at moments. And I'm not always going to get things right either, and that I want that to evolve I too with it. But Shoot Your Shot has it's just allowed me to put myself. I still don't put myself at the forefront of playing. If it doesn't make, and I know that there's a lot of people who have their own club nights that will always, stick themselves on the lineup, and that's okay. But I'm just more mindful now of maybe some guests that it makes more sense that it's it's a lineup of people who are all trans rather than me being on it. That's a celebration there. But it's helped me in the brand of that. Not only that, the stuff with Anna giving Leisure Quest gigs as well, and all of it goes hand in hand. My own DJ sets, Shoot Your Shot, Leisure Quest, and the places that I want to promote the venues, the ones that I enjoy. I think that helps too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think not losing sight of it's bigger than yourself in terms of Shoot Your Shot, or for example, Redstone Press as an entity, and knowing that it can open doors in certain ways that you may not be able to open, or would have less access to should you not have Shoot Your Shot. But it's like you say, it's bigger than you. It's giving the space to those who deserve it and haven't had that space, and giving a platform to people who have something to say but haven't been given the opportunity to. And that, like you say, it goes hand in hand, because people see that and see that you're doing that alongside doing your own thing, and it shows integrity, and people then want to be involved with what you're involved with. So yeah, next thing I thought we could maybe talk about, just looking, Steve has just mentioned that there's a comment from Matthew coming in the chat. So this is from Matthew, says, I know folk out there on the West Coast and Islands who have heard of Shoot Your Shot and are itching to travel down to Glasgow for it. So when, can you tell us, we'll just quickly, can you tell us when the next Shoot Your Shot is?
The next, the last two Shoot Your Shots of the year, Saturday, December the 4th. And there's Friday. I don't normally have it on a Friday, but yeah, a one-off. Friday, December 17th at the Berkeley Suite. The first one is going to be a fundraiser for some of our friends who have GoFundMes for their transitions. So we want to raise awareness and funds for them. And the second one is with a Glasgow collective who are doing really good, really amazing things right now. Fast music. It's completely different to what I think you would get at a Shoot Your Shot. Anything goes really at Shoot Your Shot, but yeah, we're going to have a collab with them. It's a good way to finish the year. But I'll for those that are at the West Coast and Islands, I can tell you that some of the guests that we have for next year are Sherelle, DJ Paulette.
Oh wow! Okay. So Matthew, if you're listening, there you go. There's some tips, there's dates to put in the diary, and some things to look forward to. So we're just we've got about, well, we're meant to finish on the hour, but we'll probably just run over. We haven't had any questions.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, we'll just keep chatting for
You've been
now.
away.
But I thought what we could do is just play a couple of minutes of from a mix of yours with Panook from EHFM. So Steve, if you could just lay that one up, please, and we'll listen to that for a couple of minutes, and then we'll close out with a little bit more chat. Oh. So I think we are having a little technical on that mix.
Oh, well.
So what we'll do is we'll leave that for now, and we'll just chat a little bit more, and then we'll finish with the song that you sent over.
Okay.
So we've talked a little bit about, we've discussed Shoot Your Shot and the kind of the sides around promotion and why you got into that. But I thought we could finish by talking a little bit about taking the kind of leap, the step into full-time work within a creative aspect. So we talked about, we've talked about the turning point in the past, you and I, like at the moment of going, okay, this is for me. This is what I want to do. This is, I'm going to commit to this, or try to commit to this full time. When was that when was that kind of point apparent to you, and how did you come to that kind of conclusion?
It's been sorry, I'm getting a lot of echo there. I think it's gone now. It's been on my mind for quite a while to take that leap, and it was on my mind. It was at the beginning of 2020. Then, lo and behold, something happened and changed it. Changed it around for many of us, or all of us for that matter, and especially in the creative industries. So thankfully, that part-time bar job that I had really helped me with furlough throughout the pandemic, and I continued to keep with that job when we got out of the place. But very suddenly, when we were told that we could reopen clubs again, that changed my job position a hell of a lot. I also scan parcels for a courier company. I won't mention who they are. And I also packed shelves for a supermarket corporation. I done night shifts during the pandemic to keep me active, but also get a little bit of dosh too. I keep me going, and finally, I didn't need to consider any of that anymore when, Nicola Sturgeon told us, get going, we can reopen. Yeah.
So was it, sorry to interrupt, just because you said that at the start of 2020, same as pretty much the same as myself, I had grand thoughts and ideas about how this decade would begin, and it kind of all went down the pan very quickly. But was it in your mind to be like, okay, this year is going to be the first year of which I'm working towards, and then it was halted, and then that gave you time to almost refine that idea and put in, because obviously post-pandemic, you're saying you're still doing, you were still working on a bar and whatnot. Did the opportunity to work creatively full-time, was that something that you sought out, or was there something that came past your vision, so to speak, and you reached out for it?
It was always something that I wanted to sort out, and it's definitely about just the confidence. It's a leap of deciding that I no longer need this safety net, because if I choose to take that, it's not even risk when you end up knowing that if I continue to focus my time and energy into this, I know that the end goal will, and that's confidence really. And it's without a doubt the lack of it for a while that kept me pouring pints. And we all need that little bit of it, but eventually it was a very dramatic leap when I was told to I get back into venues. But the other stuff with working in venues and showing what you're able to achieve, that just ended up opening further doors for me, and that's allowed me to just focus time on further bookings, and it's been good. But it's confidence that's just allowed that. Yeah.
And I think that was something you've actually just reminded me that I wanted to mention, because Riverside Festival this year, you were involved on the team for that, and that is if you would like to describe a little bit about what that was that you were doing, but basically for me it's a really good example of work, like creating work and working creatively, but not not in the traditional sense of making a song whatever, but it was finding or seeking out a company that puts on a major festival in Glasgow, And yeah, if you'd like to talk a little bit about that, because that's an avenue of which I mentioned earlier that could be for people to, you know, like these are things that need to be done essentially.
Yeah. Well, what I done behind the scenes, I done stage management for the satellite stage, and that was for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is just making sure that the bands get on time. I also had to make sure that some people weren't
Misbehaving.
making the backstage space a creche, but that
Yes.
failed miserably on the Friday.
Yes.
But
yeah, we won't talk too much about that.
no, okay. But that was a job that I had to do, and also behind the scenes, we just wanted to make sure that signage was correct in the places. They wanted to be mindful about the language that was being used. This was the first, again, with the lineup that was being created at the Riverside Festival, that it was more. It wasn't just fully dominated by the straight white man, and they wanted
it was a
to
lot
make
more representative.
it was more representative than it ever has been, and with that we wanted to make sure that the security and everyone else who was working was above board about the new audience that was coming through. But that's another duty, and that's everyone trying to reach out and doing something now in Glasgow. I can't make much comment on what happens in other cities, or if people are having these discussions and healthy conversation, and admitting that they need a hand with it, and they're going to listen.
Yeah, I think a point that is kind of becoming clear to me is also that, you know, like with Shoot Your Shot and the effort and the diligence that you put in to shoot your shot, and the, you know, like the language and the staff and speaking to the staff at the venue, you know, like making sure everyone's on the same level, all that kind of stuff. Yes, it's not necessarily a, you know, like it's a job, but it's not something that is maybe seen as like a traditional job, for example. But by doing that and it being your passion, it is leading to then being able to work for outside of Shoot Your Shot and still be doing that. And I think that's like the point I think I'm very badly trying to make is that it, you know, like if you can become a professional in your passion, and you can then adapt that professional passion into other work environments within the creative industry. So for your example, well, your example is a perfect one. In the same way that if I, you know, like I'm running an independent record label, if after X amount of time I feel confident in what I'm doing, then I would start to apply for jobs with different major labels that maybe is an assistant role or is A&R, and that's how a lot of people then can get their foot in the door as getting a salary job or, you know, a contract with a company, and it not being just kind of scraping to make ends meet and a lot of the time paying your own way. And I think that's a really important point, that your experience through Shoot Your Shot has led to being able to kind of officiate that experience into a workable experience with other companies. And that's something that I'd love everyone to be able to do, because you don't necessarily need to bang out an EP of club belters, you know, like we all love it, but there's so many jobs in this industry, and they're all vital, because the experience is meant to be a euphoric and enjoyable and enriching experience in the club, and there's so many cogs that turn within that machine to make that happen. So we talked a little bit. I know you're a singer, and that you sing on some of your DJ sets. It's maybe not what you're best known for, but I think it's really important that, yeah, like I said, that we kind of highlight that there's no you don't need to be traditionally creative to be creative in an industry. What have you been like working on? And was there, sorry, I'm getting a little bit lost now as well, because we're coming to the end and I'm just checking the time. Oh wow, we're 5 minutes over. So we will, unfortunately, we will bring it to a close, but I'll just ask you one more question. So, what advice would you give, or do you have any advice for folks who are looking to find a space in the creative industry, both for those who make music and those who don't?
It's first and foremost, it's all about showing your enthusiasm, and that's the part that will make it winning for you. And that's how it began for me. I had to, I reached out to the clubs and the people that I loved listening to, and it was again about the how the atmosphere worked. There was a night called Utter Gutter that was around in Glasgow, and I started doing PR for them, then other events, and so working the doors at places, and it's still showing your interaction with venues, and it was a good way of also doing PR. What you up to on this night? Here's a flyer. But it is all about just putting yourself out there, and the one thing that the lockdown really helped me with was making further connections out with people outside of Glasgow, and as a result of that, that's allowed me to play in cities that I've never played in before. And it's good to make those connections on your doorstep, and how that evolves eventually is what I'm internationally, and
paid work as well. It's I think what you touched, well, what you've said about being enthusiastic and going out there and making connections has been a theme throughout all of the previous discussions we've had. That's the overarching theme about, like, how, if you were to give one point on how to get a foothold in the industry, it's about treating those the way you'd like to be treated, and showing enthusiasm in not just your own stuff, and like going along, and like you say, if you're you could be flyering for a club, you could be collecting glasses, anything, like you're there. If you're there and you become a face that people recognize and know throughout your enthusiasm for being there, then when an opportunity arises, you're going to be a consideration if you express interest in it. You're not just an anonymous person that's come off the street that they've never met before. You've shown you're committed by being there and like turning up and saying hi and being enthusiastic about what you're doing. So I thought we could finish with the song that you sent. If you could just do if you could give us a little intro and explain the song, and then we'll cut it.
It was a bit tough trying to find one song that evokes Shoot Your Shot for me, because there's so many, and I've also spoken about quite a few before that have that. But today, when I was looking through songs, this one came up. It's more about the producer who's made this track, and that's a famous Italo disco producer called Fancy. And this track, he's produced it. The artist is Elvin, and just before I done this Q&A with you, that was the very first time I've ever seen the artwork for the album. I never really cared for it until I thought, I don't even know what the person looks like. I just end up getting like transported with the melodies, and that's what Italo disco does. But the reason why I chose it was because I started Shoot Your Shot as more in Italo disco, high energy, and everything goes with it. But in time, everything is allowed. I want to make space for that. We sometimes have techno bangers. It's just throbbing all night. People's interpretations of it, and but Italo disco is still something that really is quite fixated in my own sets. But what I love about it too is just it showing again, it's not something I love the melodies, but it's just music that doesn't take itself very seriously. Just look at the album, just look at the cover of this. After we finish, it's Elvin, You Set My Heart on Fire, and it's bonkers, but that's why I love it. And it's the energy. There's so many people I know in the crowd that haven't heard it, but it just brings people into this crazy euphoria. I love mixing Italo disco with techno and lots of other stuff. It's just it's cheeky, it's fun, it's nonsense.
Sometimes a bit of a palate cleanser as well. Like if you're getting too deep in one area, it's nice to sprinkle a little bit of. I mean, I'm just looking at the album cover now. If there's anything that kind of sums up the silliness and the ridiculousness of Italo, it's an album cover like that. Do you know what I mean? Because it is silly, it is fun, it doesn't take itself seriously, but the melodies and the actual composition of the music is especially
we're in Glasgow too is dominated a lot of the times with just throbbing techno, or it's an aesthetic of people looking a certain way, being serious, and forget all of that. Just get your hands up in the air and sing broken English with me. That's what Italo is.
I honestly, I think that is the perfect send off. So thank you so much, Bonner.
No worries.
We will be back in 2 weeks with another workshop, but we'll be sharing some details about that next week. But yeah, if you'd like to catch Bonner or Shoot Your Shot, Leather Quest, anything that they're involved with, check them out on their social media page, BONZAI BONNER, on Instagram and Facebook, and Shoot Your Shot as well. Very easy to find on both. And we're going to see this session out with Elvin, You Set My Heart on Fire. Thank you very much again, Bonner.
Thank you.
Driving on the highway.